perfectly.
Yeah, audible.
Namaskar, good evening. Behalf of Indian Society for Veterinary Medicine, I, Dr. C.N. Gandhar, welcome you all for today's webinar. Today we have distinguished speaker, Dr. Arvind Ingle, sir. He is delivering webinar on laboratory animal diseases and diagnostic approaches. Behalf of Indian Society for Veterinary Medicine, I welcome you, sir, and thank you for accepting our invitation to deliver web talk of your web talk on our ISPM forum, sir. Thank you very much, sir. I will take opportunity to introduce today's speaker. Dr. Arvind Ingle sir is currently working as Scientific Officer G and Officer in Charge Laboratory Animal Facility at Tata Memorial Center, Kharghar, Navi Mumbai. Dr. Ingle sir obtained BVC and AH from Nagpur Veterinary College, Nagpur in year 1989 and MSc in Veterinary Pathology from Postgraduate Institute PKV Akola in year 1992. Sir joined Tata Memorial Center, Mumbai as a scientific officer in year 1993. Sir completed 1 year PDF from USA in year 1999 to November 2000. Sir completed his PhD in year 2012. The research interest of the speaker is developing animal model, quality control embryo, cryopreservation, human tumor xenograft, and comparative pathology. Sir has published more than 100 research papers and delivered more than 140 invitee lectures at national and international forum. Sir served as the member of Board of Studies, Veterinary Pathology, MAPSU Nagpur. Again, he is ad hoc specialist for International Association of USA. He is Educational Committee member of International Council for Laboratory Animal Sciences. Sir served as the chairman of Education Committee, International Council of Laboratory Animal Sciences, Belgium. Sir is recognized as postgraduate teacher for Homi Bhabha National Institute, Deemed University, Department of Atomic Energy, Government of India since year 2013. Sir is recipient of Dr. C.M. Singh Best Food Research Article Award, Indian Association of Pathologists in year 2010 and Best Laboratory Animal Pathologist Award in year 2013. Sir attended international conferences by visiting USA, Italy, Switzerland, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Japan, Sri Lanka, South Korea, and China. Sir is Fellow of National Academy of Veterinary Science and Fellow of RAVP. Sir is currently President of Laboratory Animal Scientists Association India and immediate past President of Asian Federation of Laboratory Animal Sciences Association Japan. Such a versatile personality is with us. I request and welcome sir to deliver his webinar. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Gandhar. I'll share my presentation. Is it visible, Dr. Gandhar?
Sir, visible, sir.
Visible, sir.
Visible, no? Thank
Yes.
you, Dr. Gandhar, for the introduction and giving me opportunity to share my experience with the Indian Society of Veterinary Medicine member. I also thank Dr. Naurial for accepting my candidature for this webinar. And of course, this may be somewhat different for the members, but it would be good opportunity to get to know the laboratory animal quality importance, especially when I'm talking about the quality of laboratory animals, the way the diseases and the pathogens are dealt with, which is very important for the reproducibility of the results. So I will be talking on diseases of laboratory animals and diagnostic approaches. Members may note the questions if any, and at the end I will be happy to answer the queries. The background of the talk is everyone knows the animal usage in the laboratory research is inevitable, and laboratory animals are all animals which are used for the research or for any purpose in the laboratory. So it may be the large animal like the cattle, buffalo, sheep, goat, camel, horses, and of course the small laboratory animals, mice and rat also. So don't restrict the laboratory animals to mice and rat only, but including the primates and the dog, cat, all animals which are used for the research purpose or for some of the some kind of the animal experiment. They are all called laboratory animals. And like we are susceptible, these laboratory animals are also susceptible to various microbes. Some of them are lethal, wherein we see direct mortality, but majority of they show the clinical symptoms with high or low level of morbidity and mortality. Most of them are asymptomatic, and there lies the diagnostic importance and what we call the quality control for the pathogen. And I will be also talking on what we achieve by disease diagnosis in laboratory animals, which is very important for getting the reproducible and acceptable results in the international community. As we know, the animal species, if you classify, they are mammals, reptiles, birds, and other marine animals. In mammals, mice, rat, hamster, guinea pig, rabbit, fishes, dog, cat, non-human primates, and other large animals. They all constitute the mammals. And if you see in mammals, mice and rats, which are rodents, they constitute almost 80 to 90% of the junk. If you see the national and international literature, most of my talk would be revolving around the mice, rat, hamster, guinea pig, rabbit, because the quality per se, pathogens, they are most important in case of these animals, rather in large animals, wherein such a quality may not be warranted or not possible to achieve, because the mice and rats, which can be housed in a small area with barrier maintenance, HEPA filter, and there is a possibility to maintain under the very strict condition of microbes, wherein we can call them specific pathogen free, or we can call germ free also, if we can produce them. So to get the consistency in the animal research, or what you call uniformity or reproducibility, what is required is what type of animal breeding we employ to get the laboratory animals. What is the experimental protocol? Whether the PI or what we call the research worker is competent enough, who can design the nice experiment, whether he has the expertise to carry out this experiment, what food and water is being offered to these animals. When I'm talking about the large, not the large animal, but the small animals, which are mice, rat, rabbit, and hamster, guinea pig. Whether the controlled environment is available, because that is one of the most important. We will see in some of my next slides. Whether the quality of animals is monitored, and whether the experienced technical staff is available to maintain and carry out the experiment. So before we go into depth, we must know what are the variables of animal research. Variable in the sense, when we are conducting any of the experiment and we don't get the reproducible or the acceptable results from the international community. So what could be the reasons? They are like microbial status, genetic status, and environmental control. In case of laboratory animals, these three factors are very important. Besides this, there are two more factors I will be talking in next one or two slides. So the microbial status is like bacterial, viral, and parasitic infection of these animals. Genetic status is what is the source of laboratory animals brought in, whether they are contaminated or where there is mutation. So there are 6 programs to identify the bacterial, viral, parasitic, as well as the source, the contamination of the genetic status. And another is in case of laboratory animals, environmental factor, wherein light, temperature, humidity, air changes, positive pressure, HEPA filter, and light cycles. These are some of the 7-8 parameters which are very important, and they are also essential from the regulatory point. When anyone is going for any experiments or accreditation of the animal facility, these 7-8 points they are must be in place in order to get the accreditation or acceptable design and housing of the animal laboratory animal facility. As I said, there is another variable wherein nutritional variable. Unlike in large animal, this laboratory animal must be fed with good quality animal source. So the feed what we use for these animals is very important, and it must be also sterilized, because during the experimentation we don't want any variables out other than the experimentation. So whatever results are attributed, they must be due to the experiment and not for by any of the like bad animal feed, or if there is infection, or if there are deficiencies or the feed is not balanced, then also we are likely to get the variables in the animal research. Besides, there are also metabolic diseases, but we are not discussing them here. What we are discussing here is the microbial variable, wherein what are the diseases and how to deal with them. So before going to that, I would like to highlight the consequences of microbial contamination in case of the laboratory animals when we are doing the controlled experiments. So the microbial contaminations, they alter the experimental results. So when we are doing some experiments and if there are microbes involved, what results we get may not be truly due to the experiment, but because of the infection there is. The infection also reduces the reproducibility. Reproducibility in the sense when we conduct one experiment and also repeat once, so we must get the similar result. Or when we see any literature and we try to reproduce the result, they must be reproduced at our place also. So if they are not reproduced, that means either the animal quality is not good or we are doing something else which is not as per the standard. The microbe also renders the model unuseful because it gives erroneous and erratic results. So it cannot be used as a model for the animal research. They also contaminate biological material. So several times what we use is tumor cell line. The microbes may contaminate the tumor. We also use normal cell lines. So the the microbes may also infect the cells. We also use sera for maintaining these cells. So the serum is also contaminated. Sometimes we are working on some of the pathogenic organisms. Say now, in case of these viruses, the coronaviruses, research is going on, wherein if they are contaminated with some other viruses and which may trigger or give some of the results which are unwarranted. So that also is a variable. We don't want that also. Bacteria, viruses, and parasites, when we are using for the experiment, they must be only bacteria of our interest. There must not be any other contamination other than what we are experimenting. The microbes, when they are in the laboratory animals, there are research complications, and what we call is artifacts. That means what is not expected, and if we get those results, those are called artifacts of the animal research. Generally, they are rarely published and scattered, and therefore we are not aware of what are the artifacts of any particular research. What is required is these artifacts also must be reported so that the next researcher will try to avoid them and he can do the experiments with meaning. In case of laboratory animals, there are certain guidelines and the gold standard accepted, like NIH, National Institute of Health, they have their own set of guidelines. According to them, they have categorized the microbes into A, B, C, D, E, these 5 categories. So category A is zoonotic and human pathogens carried by animals. Category B is pathogens fatal to animals. Category C is pathogens not fatal but can cause disease in animals and affect their physiological function. Category D is opportunistic pathogens for animals, and these opportunistic pathogens, when there is uh, some of the when the animal immunological status or they are weak, then these opportunistic pathogen they are flourished and they give rise to the pathogenic condition and they give the unwarranted result. Category E is indicator of the microbiologic status of the animal colony, like parasitic infections, say Saphicia, Ovulta, or the Aspicularis. So these are the indicators. So that is category E. So these are some of the categorization, and they also listed some 20-25 viruses which are of utmost importance to screen in case of laboratory animals. And these are the viruses: Ectromelia, hantavirus, K virus, LDHV, lymphocytic choriomeningitis virus, MUM, mouse adenovirus, mouse encephalitis virus, mouse hepatitis virus, mouse thymic virus, murine cytomegalovirus, pneumonia virus of mice, polyomavirus, rat coronavirus, rat parvovirus, riovirus, rotaviruses, and Sendai viruses. These are some of the viruses wherein if a lab is testing for some rodent pathogens, this panel must be listed and done if you are accepting or adopting the NIH guide. Similar way, there are bacteria listed, and these are some of the 10 to 15 bacteria which are of importance. There are other bacteria also, but which are not pathogenic as far as the laboratory animal are concerned. And when we are testing them, it is an indicator, but they may not be causing the pathogenesis. But what are listed, they cause the pathogenesis and they must not be present in the laboratory animals when we are experimenting on them. Similarly, there is another guide, Federation of European Laboratory Animal Science Association. They also have laid down and published several of the publications. This is one of the publications from Mahler 2004, wherein they have recommended certain pathogens to be tested. So these are the bacteria and what is the frequency that is also adopted, and whoever has the laboratory to check the pathogens and they wanted to check, they either have to adopt either NIH, ELISA or the national guidelines, wherein there are set guidelines to screen the laboratory pathogens, laboratory animal pathogens. So these are the bacteria as listed in NIH guide also, and they must be screened if you want to make them specific pathogen free. These are the viruses. Similar way and the frequency of testing. There is another factor mentioned in CELASA guideline, the number of animal or the sample size. I'm not going in details for that number of animals to be tested from each of the strain or the colony, but in case there are queries, we can discuss it later. CELASA also lists the additional agents like hantavirus, herpes virus, LDHV, polyomavirus, and SARS, Klebsiella, and other Pseudomonas, Pneumocystis, Pseudomonas, and Staphylococcus also, because they are also pathogenic to the laboratory animals. So what I am going to do is some of the important pathogens. I will just give the examples how they can affect the research. So what are their outcome and what way it is going to affect our research. So LCMV, lymphocytic choriomeningitis virus, is one of the virus which has the zoonotic importance. So if you see the literature, there are sporadic incidences wherein the viruses have been also found in or reported from humans. And because it causes the brain changes, it can have the varying degree of mortality. It is of public importance, and each laboratory must have this LCMV at least checking because it is a zoonotic disease. So what is caused is glomerulonephritis, and it influences humoral and cellular immune response. It causes a long-lasting immunodepression and transient bone marrow aplasia. So if we are working on immunology and if there are such changes by LCMV, definitely the pathogen is going to produce some of the variable, and whatever results we are getting due to the research may not be because of the result, but because of the LCMV. So in such cases, the LCMV presence is not warranted. As far as oncology is concerned, it enhances the frequency of lymphoma after treatment. So there are some strains wherein there are spontaneous lymphomas in some of the strains, like the AJ are there, HMI. And in HMI, if there is a LCMV, definitely you get higher incidence of lymphoma. And when you treat the animals during the experiment, you get the enhanced frequency of lymphoma. And that is because of the LCMV coexistence. Another virus is hantavirus. This is also zoonotic. And in India also this has been reported. You may be aware sometimes some years back from Andhra Pradesh there were few reports wherein hantavirus were reported, and that is also very hazardous, and it has varying degree of the mortality in case of humans. It has health hazard to person working in the animal colonies. It is life-threatening hemorrhagic disease. It affects brain, liver, lung, and spleen. And once it is reported, then the laboratory animals come into picture, and then the health authorities, they have the eyes on the laboratory animals, and they generally try to avoid the escape, or they try to take the laboratory animals for these viruses. Another virus in laboratory animals is Sendai virus. It increases the mitotic cells in bronchi and lungs. It produces edema, increased bronchial mast cells. So if you are working on the lung or respiratory system, and if there are Sendai virus infection, they are no good for the Sendai virus reduces the tumorigenicity, reduces transplantability. So if someone is working on the carcinogenesis, the Sendai virus also affect the outcome of the carcinogenesis. So for oncology also, Sendai virus presence is not good. It increases NK cell cytotoxicity and delayed wound healing. So if someone is working on wound healing or NK cells, that is also not good if the Sendai virus is present. So for these things, the Sendai virus presence is very detrimental and is not at all advised to have it. And the only way is to screen them and inform the researchers that these are the status, the SPS status of the animal, and accordingly the PIs, they may try to avoid these infections or try to treat them, and then once they are free, the researcher can use them for the experimentation. Mouse hepatitis virus. So this is a very highly contagious virus, and almost all animal facility must be positive with this MHV. It has morbidity and mortality in case of infants as well as immunocompromised mice. Other immunocompetent mice are not so much affected, but their infants, they are affected. It produces wasting syndrome, wherein the animal becomes cachexic and ultimately it dies. It modulates immune response. It changes liver metabolism. it contaminates biological products, it reduces incidence of diabetes in NOD mice, it modulates T cells, and as I said, it is highly contagious. So because of this, we must be sure that there is no MHV when we are doing the liver research, or we are producing the diabetes, or we are working on the T cells. So moreover, this is very contagious, so very difficult to get rid of once the colony is infected, and literally we have to either sacrifice all the animals, or we have to exhaustively work on the segregation and hygienic conditions, and then after a few years you may get rid of these viruses. Otherwise, you have to live with these viruses, like we are having the coronavirus, and we are living with the presence of corona. Several times what we get is the changes in the animals, and when we are observing the gross changes, either the technicians or the veterinarians, they must be vigilant, and this is one of the cases wherein you can see the liver patches, and these are the pathognomic changes in case of MHV. And of course, these are pathognomic, but we have to always check with the ELISA and PCR method along with the histology also. And that is the confirmatory to have this presence of MHV. So, as I said, it produces the giant cells in the liver, and that's how what we get is the essential formation in case of liver, and you can see the destruction of several of the hepatocytes and the liver parenchyma, and you also get the inflammatory cells in several of the pockets in the liver. Another disease is mycoplasma. In case of mice and rat, it is Mycoplasma pulmonis, and it influences carcinogenesis when mycoplasma is present. And unfortunately, because several of the laboratories, they use the serum, bovine serum, mycoplasma is transmitted from the serum to the laboratory. And if you try to trace the mycoplasma positive colony, this is several times is traced to the serum. It causes respiratory damages of the airways and the epithelial cells, mucus secretion. There is bronchitis, bronchiectasis, emphysema, and abscesses in the lungs, and marked leukocytosis. And because of this mucus formation only, the animal is in distress, and it is the mouse or rat is literally gasping for air. And when you catch hold the animal near the ear, your technicians, or when you go and have a round, you can hear the gruntling sound, and that is one of the pathognomic lesion and signs to identify the mycoplasmosis. As in case of immunology, diversified effects on the immune system are seen in case of mycoplasma. In case of reproductive physiology, genital tract, because the mycoplasma, they literally occlude the fallopian tube, and because of which there is no fertilization, because it causes the fibrosis of the fallopian tube, and the movement of ova or the sperm is restricted, and that's how there is negative influence on in vitro or in vivo fertilization. On fetal development also there is effect, and it causes it affects the fertility also. There are several times fetal losses and resorption, male and female infertility because of these changes, as I said. There is intrauterine infection of embryos also, and this is vertically transmitted from the mother to the fetus. And that's how this is very important pathogen to be tested, and majority of the facilities, they have this mycoplasma presence, and very difficult to erase, in the sense the treatment is very long, and in case of laboratory animals, because the BMR is so high, doses of animal, the antibiotics are high, and individual injections of, say, tetramycin or the higher antibiotic, it is very difficult to inject every animal. And the only option is giving the antibiotics in the water, but it has to be given for a long period. And because of the antibiotic, what happens, the microflora in the stomach is disturbed, and that's how the animal may develop diarrhea or it may go weak. So injection is the best option to treat mycoplasma. As a gold standard, internationally, these infections are not to be treated. The animals has to be straight away sacrificed. And once you sterilize the animal rooms, you have to get the new breeders and try to replenish the old breeder with the new one and expand the colony. That is the accepted method. However, under our scenario, several times it is not possible to import the strain, and what we generally do is treat the animal. And we have done some of the experiments wherein we were able to get rid of the mycoplasma and start a fresh colony from the existing one only. There are Helicobacter hepaticus as well as Baileys infections. It colonizes in liver, colon, cecum, gallbladder as well as stomach. It may induce liver tumors, both adenomas and carcinomas in older mice like AJ mice strains. So whenever the Helicobacter strains are available in the animal, it is not good for even oncology. So whenever you are importing the animals and the exporter, they find the Helicobacter in the animal, generally they avoid supplying the animals as a matter of policy. And once they are free from the animals, they only send the animals. However, based on our request, they can send it, but never import the infected animals from any other source. For that, you have to always ask for the health certificates, because generally along with each of the shipments, the supplier, they provide the health certificate wherein they state what are the infections present prevailing in the animal. It also causes the inflammatory large bowel disease in case of kid mice, and that's how Helicobacter infected animals are not good for the liver research, or if you are producing the colon disease or the sickle gallbladder or stomach cancer. So they interfere and they may produce the higher incidence of the affections in these organs. This is one of the gross lesion wherein you can see the prolapse. This may be from by some other diseases also, but this is predominantly seen in case of Helicobacter, wherein if you see the histology, you can see the inflammatory changes in the and that is the gross pathognomonic lesion for identifying the Helicobacter. There are, I'm not discussing here the large animals, but I would like to discuss one of the slides wherein there are, even in case of non-human primates, there are certain diseases which are of importance, and some of them are also zoonotic. So those who maintain the large animal like primates, they must know what are the infections prevailing. So there are herpes B virus, hepatitis A virus, mycobacterium tuberculosis. So this is one of the disease which is monitored in case of primates, and even the staff working must be screened regularly by doing either the test available or the X-ray, so that the infection is not transmitted from human to primates and vice versa. There is simian immunodeficiency virus, there is CH1 virus, Marburg, monkeypox, measles, as well as rabies. Out of this list, only mycoplasma mycobacterium is generally being screened, if at all, and rest of them are not screened, unfortunately, but they must be screened so that we know the status of our animals. There are also some of the bacteria and the protozoas, Campylobacter, Shigella, Giardiasis, amoebiasis, ascariasis, testos, and strongyle. These are some of the parasites even they are found. And in order to get the reproducible and accepted results, we must see that the animals are also not carrying any of the protozoa or parasites. So when the PIs they are doing the research and they don't get the expected results, generally they come back to us and ask us what is wrong with the animal. And this is everywhere worldwide. The researchers generally try to blame on the either veterinarians or the supervisors in the animal facility. So generally, what we do is we try to pinpoint from the animals whether the animals are infected, whether the maintenance is not good, or if the experimentation is not done properly by the PI. And personally, I feel that the animal handlers, they are the best quality control or the first line of soldiers. If you train them properly to identify the changes in the laboratory animal breeding or the experimentation, they can notify and give you the lot of hints, and based on that then you can go ahead and try to pinpoint and find out what is the problem. So training of your animal handlers is must, and which is very important if you want to get the quality animals for your research. Another is quality breeders. So when we start the animal facility, from where we get the breeders is very important. And if the seed is good, then the progeny is always good. Of course, after you get the animals, you must be maintaining them under all these environmental, genetic, and microbial free, and then only you can produce the quality animal. Besides that, unlike in case of large animal, in case of small animal like mice and rat, rabbits, and guinea pig, you must have defined breeding program. So generally, in case of laboratory animals, we must get the inbred animal. So inbreeding is like mating the related animals for at least 20 consecutive generations, and then we get the homozygous animal, at least 98.6% of the homozygosity. And sometimes you also need outbred animals, which is also mating non-related animals. Some of the experiment like toxicity studies, wherein you need the heterozygous population like the human beings are. So when you want to corroborate the results in humans, you must have the heterozygous animal. So for that, there is a fixed breeding pattern that must be adopted. Then again, standard experimental protocol. If the PI is following the standard protocol, then there are chances of getting the reproducible results. Am I audible, Dr. Galdar?
Yes, sir.
You are audible,
Hello.
sir.
You are audible, sir.
And
No
okay,
issue, sir.
okay.
Please carry
Yeah.
on, sir.
Right.
Please carry on.
I thought I will just take in between, otherwise I will go on and it is not audible.
No, sir. It's really very excellent presentation, sir. I'm taking notes from your presentation also, because we are also dealing with laboratory animal. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah. So the standard experimental protocol must also be followed, and then only we can have the accepted results, and we can publish them in the international publications and journals. We must have expert research team. When I say the research team is the PI who is conducting the experiment, the technical staff who are literally doing the experiment, the students, and of course the veterinarian involved who will be assisting the PIs for the experimentation. So the team consists of all these components, and unless there is a coordination between all of them, you cannot expect the reproducible results. So knowing all this, there are infections or there are contaminations, genetic contamination and all. How to balance the research? So in next few slides, I'm going to provide you the insight how to check the infections. So when there are reports or the complaints from the PI for not getting the expected results, we have to identify and deal the variables. So as I said in my few slides earlier, what are the variables? Variables are microbial status, microbial infections, and the genetic status. So we are not discussing genetic contaminations, how to deal with. That is another topic and a long topic. But what we are discussing here is microbial status, how to identify and deal with. So as we know, all of us know that the methods are conventional methods, like using the media, like the nutrient agar, subroad agar, the special medias, and also biochemical tests. And when we are checking the bacteria, this is the only method wherein we can check the bacteria and treat them. If we want to treat the animals with the antibacterial, in case of large animal, we can go straight away with the antibiotic, but in case of small animals, because they are research animal, we don't want the variables. Moreover, the cost of treatment is too much. I mean, if we have only small animals, it is okay. But because we are maintaining thousands of animals and at a time giving treatment to all these animals and that too for a long period, it is very costly affair. So always go for the identification and isolation of the bacteria and do the antibiotic sensitivity test and then only go for the antibiotic treatment. Alternatively, you can make the use of ready-made ELISA kit, but this is only identification. In case of bacterial infections, if you want to treat them, there is no way but to identify and isolate. But in case of ELISA, the viral infections, you can go by either ELISA or PCR method. Of course, they are also available for bacterial infections. But in these two methods, there is no scope for going for the specific antibiotic treatment. But they are the best method to identify. So internationally, either ELISA along with PCR or conventional or PCR. So a combination of tests is the recommended method to establish the laboratory. Then only the results are accepted and authentic. So I'm giving some of the lesions wherein either the technicians or even veterinarian who are opening the animal, and some of the pathognomic lesions can be easily identified. Like here, in case of rat, this is Mycoplasma pulmonis. You can see the hepatization of the lungs, and this is normal part, and you can see the hepatization. In advanced cases, you can see these are the linearly arranged abscesses, and because of the abscesses, the animal literally gasps and starves for oxygen. This is also available in mice. So this is one of the mouse wherein in advanced stages, these are the abscesses in case of lung, and you don't find any normal part, which is hepatization, and these are linearly placed, like you are sprinkling the mycoplasma on these lungs and they are developing the abscesses. All these photographs I'm showing because we also provide the quality control services. So we do get animals and, for testing, we provide on charges basis. Of course, being the government organization, we don't charge heavily. But because we have the quality control services for our own purpose, we can also provide these services to outsiders. And when we do the histology of the lungs, you can see the bronchioles are literally filled with the mucus as well as the inflammatory cells, and there is no normal parenchyma left in the lungs. And you can imagine how the animal must be gasping and starving for oxygen, and that makes the grunting sound because of when the air is passed through the limited constricted bronchiole, it produces a grunting noise, and that is one of the pathognomic lesion signs to identify the mycoplasma. As I said, we have the PCR panel testing in case of laboratory animals, and we check all majority of the, say, at least 15 to 16 pathogens by PCR method. And this is one of the panel received from the outside source for checking the mycoplasma. they produce the 245 bands of PCR product, and except this sample all are positive. This is the positive control, and this is what we check internally. We have the 6 monthly program to take the animals for all the pathogens what we screen, and we have established lab wherein we have the positive control received from the International Council for Laboratory Animal Science, which provides us the positive control, and that is must when we are saying that the animals are positive, so we must have the positive control. So this is how we identify the diseases. Sometimes, like as I said, in case of the bacteria, the Pseudomonas. Pseudomonas is the first producing organism, and we don't want the Pseudomonas in the laboratory animal. And when we take the stool samples, we streak it on the nutrient agar. This is like the colonies are found, and we must identify and confirm them. So we also do the biochemical test. And not only biochemical, we go further and also do the PCR test. And this is the positive control wherein we expect 726 best pair of the product in case of the laboratory animals. And in this panel, there is no positive control. Sorry, there is no test which is, test sample which is positive. One of the exotic or imported disease is murine norovirus. This is recently in last decade this has been introduced, and because we import the animal, the breeders from outside, this is one of the source. Hello, Mr. Galdar. Just checking.
Sir. Hello, sir.
Yes, sir. Audible,
Yeah.
sir.
Okay.
You're audible,
So,
sir.
okay, right. So, no disease in immunocompetent mice. So this is this MNV, murine norovirus. It causes the infection and pathogenesis in the immunocompromised mice like nude and scared mice. And we have this PCR panel to screen this virus also. And as you see, all animals are negative for this MNV. As I said earlier, MHV, we must take our colony for mouse hepatitis virus. And in India or even in other countries, which is rampant, and every other colony is MHV positive. And we also check this one, and the expected product size is 197 base pair, and this is positive control, and the test samples are negative for the MHV. We also, as I said, we also receive the animals for checking the infection. Like this is one of the mouse photographs received. You can see the icterus and jaundice symptoms. And when on liver also you see this hemorrhagic patches. This is the pathognomic lesion of MHV. But unless we do the test, we cannot give the results. So what we do, we also check these liver, and we can see these giant cells and multinucleated cells, and these are the necrotic patches. We also do ELISA. So parallel to MHV, we have to see what are the comparative diagnosis. So mycoplasma also is one, and sometimes what happens, this MHV, because of the cross reaction, it may not be positive or negative. So surprisingly, this mouse was negative by ELISA method. But when we do MHV by PCR, you can see this is positive and the sample is also positive. However, if you see here, MHV by ELISA is negative. So this is because of the cross reaction, or if it has no antigenic similarity with the ELISA being run, but confirmatory is the PCR. So always try to develop the PCR method which is confirmatory, and because we also have the positive control, and unlike the serology, because it works on the antigenic similarity. If there is antigenic similarity or if there is something different, some different factors like washing is not proper and all this, you may get the erotic or the misinterpreting result. So the PCR is the positive result. I mean the confirmatory test. As I said, for the antibiotic treatment, we must do the antibiotic sensitivity and then do the treatment. For that, what we do is on nutrient agar you spread the colony and grow them and then do the sensitivity. And based on which zone is the highest, accordingly, you select the antibiotic and try to treat the animals with this antibiotic as per the literature available. Next part I am dealing a little bit is parasitic diseases because they are also important. So there are ectoparasites as well as endoparasites in case of laboratory animals. Both of them, they do not cause mortality per se, but they surely affect the results, and they also modulate the immune response as well as the experimental results. So we don't want to have any kind of ectoparasites or the endoparasites. The tests are very easy. You just like we do for dogs or cats, skin scrapping and see under the microscope. And if at all there are the ectoparasite, you can see this gravid eggs also. And on the hair, generally you see the hairs, the mice eggs, and which can be easily identified under the low power of the microscope. And there are endoparasites like Aspicularis. You can see the symmetrical eggs as we do in case of cattle, and this is the parasite. As such, you can note the elongated esophageal loop in case of Aspicularis, and other parasite which is very important. It must not be in the animal facility is Syphacia, and the testing is the best way is using the cellophane tape. This is the transparent cellophane tape we use for the paper. So a piece of cellophane tape is to be stuck on the anal region because the Syphacia females, they come towards the colon, they lay the eggs and the eggs are made perianal. And in case of stool samples, generally you cannot get the Syphacia egg. But this is the very easy method. Take the tape test, stuck it on the slide and observe under microscope. You can see if at all there are the banana shaped eggs. And the parasite per se is like if you see the esophageal loop is round. This is the pathognomic sign to differentiate from Aspicularis. And under high power, you can see this is a very round shape of the esophagus. And the tail of the Syphacia is very elongated and tapering, unlike the Aspicularis. So these are two very easy points for identification of these parasites. Sometimes some years back, this is the parasite I could identify. I mean, during my regular checkup, this mother, you can see how many she is laying hundreds of eggs, and even one egg is enough for the infection in case of the laboratory animals. So at a time, you can see how many animals are being infected if you don't take the proper care. This was published in Journal of Veterinary Parasitology in 2011. And for your information, these Aspicularis and Syphacia, if we cannot identify grossly, there are PCR panels available, and this is available from Farrell et al. In Veterinary Parasitology Journal. And there are several other papers wherein you can also get the primers synthesized, and you can do the you can take the either the fecal colon or the stool samples take out the DNA, and then you can run these tests to identify the parasites. In the animal facility, as I said, we must be always vigilant, and whenever we find anything different, we must try to identify and characterize. Few years back, I got papillomatous growth on the surface, body surface of the nude mice, and when I did the histopathology, you can see all papillomatous growth. There is no squamous cell carcinoma, but the papillomas. And because it was out of my purview to characterize further, what I did, I collaborated with the Jackson Laboratory US, and they identified it as a papilloma virus, mouse papilloma virus. See in the cell, you can see how nicely they are, scattered, and this is under high power. And this was published in Veterinary Pathology, official journal of American Association of Veterinary Pathology in 2011. And this is the first mouse papilloma virus identified, discovered in our laboratory. So we must be vigilant, and whatever we get, we must be characterizing so that we report it timely, and we take due advantage of the result. This is just take you out of for the one. When I published the mouse papilloma virus, I happened to see the Nobel laureate Dr. Hausen, who has received the Nobel Prize for discovery of human papilloma virus, and he got the Nobel in the year 2008, and he's a German scientist, and I was happy to see him in one of the meetings. So what we achieve by undertaking the quality control, we get the quality animals from doing the quality control services. We get the we reduce the dependability on other laboratories. If we have in-house breeding and quality control, we don't have to ask animals from outside source, so we can control the batches to batches animals, and we also reduce hazards of import. We don't have to, once you import, you go on breeding them under control conditions and don't rely on anyone else. This way, you also reduce the variations of results because you are getting, you are independent, and you don't import the animals, and there are no variations in the animals. Even there is no variation in the results you get. You also reduce the use of animals because you get the expected results using small animals. You don't use larger animals, and because the standard deviation in by using these animals are less, you are using very small number of animals. You increase the reproducibility of results because you are using homozygous or the quality animals, and you also adopt the 3 R's: replacement, reduction, and refinement of the Russell and birth. So these are the 3 R principles. If you are using the quality animals, you ultimately use the and adopt the 3 R's. This is our Extract website, wherein this is our team, and whatever I said is listed. If you go under quality control services and quality control, all the pathogens what we do are listed here, and even the quality control services. If anyone wanted the services, we can provide the services. I would like to mention here, because we are the government organization and I am the registered teacher under the SBNI, we also entertain the summer or short-term trainees from various colleges. Those are like the MSc, MUSc, MTech students who wanted to spend some time in our facility or complete their dissertation. We every year receive the students, and because there are no charges even for the government organization, your members or teacher or the students, they may take advantage, and I am open to accept these trainees as per the mutually accepted dates, and you can take the advantage. Several of the Akola, Nagpur, Mumbai students, they are coming to us, and they will be getting exposed in the animal facility. And to summarize my talk, animal use is inevitable. and rodent, because the rodents are universal model, they are also infected, and the quality of animal is possible through the quality control services, and majority are the microbiological monitoring, and which is important to getting the reproducible results. And you, by doing so, you are also practicing the animal welfare by using small number of animals. With this, I complete my talk, and thank you again for giving me opportunity and your patience listening me. Dr. Kalyan, thank you.
Yes, sir. Sir, thank you very much. Again, sir, this is the eye-opening webinar for clinical veterinary medicine persons, sir. Really, what are the diseases of laboratory animals that you have covered? And first of all, I am really thankful to you for your appeal that the student across the veterinary colleges in India can be a part of your institute. They can undertake some sort of the research work with you, and definitely they can be benefited with good publication of national and international repute. At the same time, they maybe get chance to present their research work at national and international conferences and whatever the seminars are there, sir. Really thankful to you for giving us this opportunity and inviting us that we can send our student to work under your noble guidance, sir. Really thank you very much. And this step,
this is our website.
Yes, sir.
You can note down, those who are interested, they can go through this website, and all information is available. My email address and contact details are available.
Thank you, sir. Sir, just in a couple of seconds, I would like to brief that Indian Society for Veterinary Medicine is organizing webinar for all our ISVM Life members, faculties of veterinary universities, and faculties and students across the India, so that they can get the idea about the different diseases or different species wise, what are the, it means diagnostic approaches available. At the same time, what are the recent trends in diagnosis and treatment. So considering that objective, we are inviting a different speaker who have been commanding research work in their respective area. In that, sir, we found that you have in the commanding, it means research as far as the laboratory animals and diagnostic approaches for laboratory animals. Sir, we are really very thankful to you, sir, for accepting our invitation and delivering web talk on our ISVM forum, sir. Sir, there are certain, again, sir, I would like to brief one important thing, sir. For today's webinar, our senior ISVM Life members, they are enjoying your presentation, sir. And students from different veterinary college across the India, they are also participated in this presentation, sir. So heartily congratulations to you also, sir, for delivering this wonderful talk on our ISVM forum, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Sir, quickly, I will take some questions. They are available with me in my chat box. First of all, I would like to thankful to Dr. Ankush because he has sent 3 to 4 questions, sir. Couple of questions I will take immediately.
Okay.
He's asking, sir, what care we can do or we should take during maintenance of transgenic animals, sir?
So, based on what kind of transgen is there, majority of the transgenic animals, they are not immunocompromised, but definitely because they are genetically modified, you need to maintain under strict barrier maintenance and without any infection and all this, because this is one of the variable wherein, like, if you have produced this transgenic animal and you expect that transgene to be expressed in the animal, but at the same time, if there are some infections which are not giving the opportunity to the animals to express the phenotype, and definitely it is of no use. So unlike the immunocompetent mice, transgenic should also be treated as a very critical animal, and we must always try to maintain them under strict barrier, and wherein we are trying to avoid the infection to these animals also.
Again, sir, he has quoted 2 questions. Please suggest the reference textbook for laboratory animal diseases, and he's also asking what is the deworming schedule for laboratory animals, sir?
Unfortunately, unlike the large animal, we don't treat them with frequent interval, but you must have the schedule of quality control testing, and unless they are positive, don't treat them because that is one of the variable because the dewormers they also affect and they are that is one of the variable. So antibiotics as well as dewormers are as such not advisable. But in case you have the infection, then because there is no scope or no chance, you don't have any options, you have to do it. But as such, I don't advocate a frequent deworming in case of laboratory animal at least.
Okay, sir. Sir, this is the COVID pandemic period, sir. I'm thankful for you to giving the answers of what are the questions raised by Dr. Ankush. Sir, two most important things as Dr. Galtar, I would like to it means ask, sir. As far as the hormonal analysis in animals are concerned and hormonal analysis in laboratory animals are concerned. So, can we advocate or promote radioimmunoassay technique for estimation of the hormones in laboratory animals, sir? Just what is your opinion? Just I want to seek your opinion, sir.
Sure, sure. Whenever someone is doing research in laboratory animals, wherein you warrant the use of, testing the hormonal level, you have the RIA, one of the method advocate, and you have to use that one. So, like in large animal, you do. In laboratory animals also, you have to use the RIA for hormonal assay.
Sir, thank you very much. Sir, again, I would like to congratulate you because some of the excellent remarks they are available with me in my chat box. They're telling that excellent presentation, excellent information, and thank you very much for organizing such a wonderful webinar and all, sir. Really thankful to you, sir, for delivering such a nice webinar, which it means helpful to what are the clinical veterinary medicine persons are there with the laboratory animal diseases, sir. Thank you. Sir, last question from our side. Which animal model is suitable to undertake COVID-related research and why?
So, based on what kind of research you are doing, generally the models are hamster, Balfi mice, and of course primates. These are the three models. Depending on what parameters you are studying, if it is to study the pathogenesis, how the disease progresses, of course the non-human primates is the model. And of course, if you want to test the, like you have the either antibodies or you have the vaccine, and you want to test it for preclinical study, of course you need the Balsi mice or the hamsters. So based on what kind of research of corona aspect we are doing, these are the three best model currently being used.
Sir, thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Sir, we are at last segment of today's webinar. I would like to request Dr. Sarita to propose the vote of thanks for today's webinar. She is Executive Committee member of current Indian Society for Veterinary Medicine Executive Secretariat. I request Dr. Sarita to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for allowing me to thank our distinguished speaker, Dr. Arvind Ingleser, Laboratory Animal Senior Officer in Charge, Tata Memorial Office, with national and international knowledge as well as experience. And really, I congratulate and feel privileged to thank you, sir. You had very much made us clear about the clear pictures and important diseases of mice, and you had touched the non-human primates also, and you had just created awareness about how the well-researched plan should be taken when we are using laboratory animals, because they had just given us life-saving technologies, vaccines, and without them the animal research which we veterinarians feel, and the lab animals are very much making us clear about the several emerging as well as new diseases. So it was very interesting and very knowledgeable to see your talk and listen to you, sir. So I congratulate and thank you on behalf of ISVM team to address us and to make the importance of lab animal research very much clear. I thank our President ISVM Dr. D.S. Norial sir, General Secretary ISVM Dr. R. Ramprabhu sir, Zydus Animal Healthcare for this organization, and I thank from the bottom of my heart for the painstaking efforts taken by the webinar moderators, the whole team, Dr. C.N. Galdar sir, especially Dr. Nilesh Sindhu sir, Dr. Sujit Kumar sir, Dr. Shankar Kumar Singh, the technical support given by Mr. Senthil. So above all, I want to thank you again, Dr. Arvind English sir, the whole ISVM team, and the audience which are with us right from the beginning till end. Thank you again. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sarita.
Thank you, Dr.
See you
Sarita.
again sometime.
Yeah. English sir, will you, it means interested to forward some remarks or some message for our ISPM life members, sir? Please. It will be welcome from our side, sir. Please.
Yeah, I would just say those teachers who are part of this presentation, they promote and tell the students to take advantage of these summer training, and if they are interested to explore the laboratory animal field, because there are potential even for the employment. So unless you are exposed to the laboratory animals and quality producing animals, what are the managemental practices, quality control. Moreover, even if not the managemental, but the laboratory testing, because we have well set laboratory wherein right from the gel doc method to PCR, all the equipments are available. So if they, the students, or even for that matter teachers, because we have also been receiving teachers. So unless the teachers, they know the technical know-how and all these intricacies, they will not be able to explain to the students. So I'm open to all the teacher and student, and they can take the advantages. So that's what my appeal and request to all the teachers.
Yeah. Really, sir, we are thankful to you. And again, I appreciate that your presentation, and really thankful for delivering your what would that means experience you have, it means received from laboratory animal since last, it means 2 decades and all, sir. We are really thankful to you for sharing your what are the experience as far as the recent advances, as far as the laboratory animal disease diagnosis and all, sir. Thank you very much. With this, I will take the leave of all. Namaskar. Thank you everyone for joining our ISBM webinar. I do again request all the participants to join our next webinar, which one is on CPR. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Galda.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. See you again later. Bye.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Nilesh. Thank you, Dr.
Welcome,
Sarita.
sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you all the participants.